Hi, my name is Vincent LaBarbera. Welcome to our podcast, Mulberry Street Memories, growing up in Little Italy during the 40s, 50s, and 60s. This is one of the most famous play streets in New York City, Mulberry Street, between Prince Street and Houston Street. We are broadcasting from St. Patrick's Rectory, located at 263 Mulberry Street. It is across the street from Old St. Patrick's Church, now a basilica. I will be joined by Monsignor Donald Sukarno, who was at St. Patrick's Church. The two of us contributed to the book Meatballs and Stickball, edited by our good friend Richard Ronaldo. My name is Vincent LaBarbera. Welcome to Mulberry Street Memories, Episode 3. It's interesting because lately we've been getting a lot of positive reviews on the podcast, 1 and 2. And there's just to mention one that really I appreciated and enjoyed, was to me, all right? And it was by a lady by the name of Lois H. from New York City. And she said, "Bravo to Vinny. Listened to the podcast. Very interesting. Like getting a window into someone's past life."
Nice.
And I think at this point it sums up what we're trying to do.
Does indeed.
And I just wanted to make sure. So keep on listening and keep on making these favorable comments, and we'll grow with the flow. That's all I could say. Now, we have myself, of course, Vincent LaBarbera, Monsignor Donald Sukarno, Red Napoli has joined us, and John V. Bavona. The reason it's John V. Bavona is because he's the lawyer and he has a cousin who's the judge, John Bavona. To differentiate the two, it's John V. Bavona. Also, listening in will be Joe Graziano, one of our group, and our podcast friends, involved. So that's basically the group. And in addition to that, I have to mention our technical advisor, Hunter Savarini, who's helped us greatly with this podcast. And, let's go with the stories. Well, you know our neighborhood. Today I'd like to mention a couple of things in particular. The tough guys in our neighborhood. And that's going to be very interesting because it's only the tough guys from Elizabeth Street, less than a block and a half, to Prince Street. There are 5 or 6 tough guys I want you to remember. And I thought that each story is very interesting. The first one I want to mention is the strongest guy in the neighborhood. There is no question and no doubt that Paddy Casino was the strongest guy ever, in our neighborhood at the time. Number one, he was a mild-mannered guy. He was a weightlifter. He pumped iron, and he did a lot of strong things. He also, he did many, many things that were very, very interesting. He arm wrestled with the world heavyweight champion at the time, and wrestling champion, Bruno Sammartino. And he held his own with Bruno Sammartino. That says it all. Now, Paddy went to Harran High School. He was born around 1940. And he had, that was a rough school, very rough school. My friend Nunzi Bonviso, who recently also passed away, told me the story that Paddy was a year ahead of him, and Nunzi was going to Harran, so he wanted to speak to him about, why it's such a tough school, etc. He was a little concerned. And Nunzi was a very strong guy himself, very strong. He was a ball player too, stickball player. But Paddy said, "Look, you go to that school, don't worry about it. Mention my name, that you're with me." Well, guess what? In 4 years, nobody bothered Nunzi Bonviso, ever. So it tells you about what Paddy Casino is all about. And he is still with us. I understand he's about 86 or 87 years old and lives on Long Island, Paddy Casino.
Well, it's great. Maybe he's listening to this.
I hope so. He was a sweet guy, and let me tell you something. And God forbid you ever got into a brawl with him, which nobody did. He'd get you in a bear hug, and you couldn't breathe for a week.
Sounds like you did.
I would never even look at you. Are you kidding? He was sweet. No. Nobody bothered him because he was ripped, and I mean ripped. The second person I want to talk about is a tough guy. He was born on 7 Prince Street. I was born on 7 Prince Street. He lived in my building. His name was Croce. Mm-hmm. Now let me tell you about Croce. Croce was a guy that he lived the last floor in my building, 7 Prince Street. He was a guy that basically minded his business, and a couple of the wise guys got wind of him and being a tough guy and tried to muscle him, especially one in particular. He was a made guy, and he was a capo in the mafia, and he tried to bully him. Croce will have nothing to do with him, and he said, I don't want to hear about it. And he refused to take any orders from this person. And people marveled that this wise guy couldn't get a hold and move with him and do anything with him because he was that tough. He didn't care. And he was feared by everyone. And as far as I know, he lives on Gold Street, and he's over 90 years old. God bless Croce.
God bless Croce.
Now, yes, God bless Croce. That's it. The third person.
That's what I'm here for, to God bless all these
That's
people.
right. You're blessing everybody.
Absolutely.
Monsignor. That's
Absolutely.
All right. But anyway, he's still with us, and so is Patty Casino. Now, the third person is interesting because he was a skinny kid with big rimmed glasses. He looked like a bookworm. He was a little older than us. His name was Mikey Sidoti. All right. And he was a skinny guy, about 5'7". He couldn't weigh more than 125 pounds. And I noticed that the guys in the neighborhood, when they had a problem, the older guys, they always called on Mikey to be with them in case there was a fight. And he always went. And I questioned that, and I asked a few guys, how come you want Mikey Sidoti with you? He said, because Mikey took his glasses off, and he was a crazed maniac, and he punched people to death, and he was quick with his hands. And I couldn't ever believe that. Well, Mikey Sidoti was one of the thinnest guys, and you would never know in a million years that how tough he was. And he was also born on Elizabeth Street.
So how come he didn't have a nickname?
He didn't have a nickname.
All you guys have nicknames.
No, but he was no one had. Actually, he didn't have a nickname at all. It's most unfortunate, but he didn't have a nickname.
Tough guy.
But he was tough for people that knew him, Monsignor. Now, the fourth one actually is a person that his name was Tough Galage. Now,
there you go.
He's a Sicilian guy. They came from Sicily, and he was known as Tough Galage, which means Charlie in American a name. And we also had another guy to differentiate the two from Sicily, and they used to call him Fairy Galage. Just the fact that they differentiate the two of them. Well, Tough Galage was a guy that was about 5 feet 3, 4, and he was not only tough, but he was strong. So the neighborhood bully, which I'll never mention, found out about it, an older guy, and he heard that this guy was from Italy, was around, and he had a reputation that nobody bothered him because he wasn't afraid of anybody. Well, he walked over to Tough Galage one day, and he said the famous words in my neighborhood that everybody wanted to say, do you want to fight me? And that was the trademark. So Galage looked at him, and I guess at this point on Elizabeth Street, I think it was right near La Rosa Bakery, he started in with Tough Galage. Well, Galage, in a kneeling position, bent down because he was short. This guy was about 6 foot tall. And up to the guy's knees, he picked him up and almost threw him through the window. And that was the end of the situation. The guy didn't want any part of Tough Galage anymore. And he remains that, okay? So he kept quiet, and he didn't want to fight anymore. Now, the other situation is there was a guy named, let's see here, okay, Larry the Blade. Now, Larry the Blade was on Elizabeth Street. Very quiet. He lived in Lenny Curatola, the drummer I had mentioned in previous episodes. The drummer is in his building. Now, Larry had sunglasses. He was short, and he never said anything to anybody.
Did he have a blade?
But we were fearful of his name, Larry the Blade. We never bothered him. He never bothered us.
Yeah, because
hello
his
and
name
goodbye.
was Larry the Blade. That's
And you
why.
never heard him talk to anybody. So something had to be going on with doing something for somebody. So we kept quiet on that. So that was an interesting story about Larry the Blade. Now, the last person is an very interesting story. His name was Sal Pizzi Piazzi, or Beatsy, they called him. Now, let me tell you about this guy. First of all, he was a tremendous stickball player, best stickball player, older guys on Elizabeth Street. I once saw him hit a home run, to the next block on Spring Street. He was very powerful, nice-looking guy, looked like more like Charles Bronson without his mustache, that type, and he can punch, and he was strong. Well, one day, we used to gather at Fano's Barber Shop. I'll never forget this. And by the way, he hung out with Croce, guys that named Joe Q and Adolf, and sometimes with Ray Ficumo, who is the original owner of Ray's Pizza. So we hung out at Fano's Barber Shop when we were teenagers, 13 years old, maybe 14. And in cold weather, we used to walk in and keep warm in the barber shop. Well, knowing Pizzi, who used to come on occasion, he saw sometimes that basically, we used to talk to us and hello, how are you? And he said very few words. But one day he asked us a question, a few of us that were 13, 14 years old. He said, how you guys doing? Everything okay? And we said, not really. I said, well, he said, well, what's the problem? The problem is there was a couple of young, older guys in the neighborhood. They were taking advantage of us. They used to take our hats and hide them, and we were fearful of them.
Take your hats off.
That's right, and never returned. So that was a problem during wintertime. So I told the story to Pizzi since he asked, and there was a couple of us. I said, two in particular. Well, and he said, by the way, what are their names? I told him. So we've told him. Well, guess what? These guys never bothered us again because Pizzi took control of the whole situation, and we saw them a couple of weeks later, and they confronted us, and they said, you had to tell Pizzi. You had to tell Pizzi. Because he scares they would never even consider even arguing with Pizzi. They would be cut in half. That's how tough he was. Now, the best story of that, by the way, the best story, he was a great stickball player, as I said, and also a great softball player. Probably the best on Elizabeth Street, the older guys. But there is the best story about him that is folk, and it's a legend. It's legendary now. Pizzi, at one time or another, he had his brother-in-law, and his brother-in-law used to be Tom DeGrazia, and he wrote a book about him. Actually, he featured it in his book, all right? And I'll give you the name at the end of this podcast. But the bottom line is, they were in a car, and they wanted to talk about, let's get something to eat. So they wanted to go to Papa Joe's Sandwiches. Now, Papa Joe Olato, was a great guy. The sandwich shop was always mobbed on Prince and Elizabeth Street. So he said, stay in the car, Tom. Tommy had to be about, I'd say, 12 years old at most. He said, listen, if anybody comes, just tell them I'm going to get sandwiches. So That's what happened. The bottom line to the whole thing was he went to get a sandwich by Papa Joe's. By the way, there were 2 other places there for great food, but Papa Joe's was always mobbed because they had hot food all the time. Chicken cutlet, veal cutlet, etc., whatever you want. So, and there were 2 others. There was the Tuminelli's, which were also, they made great sandwiches. They also made delicious eggplant with provolone, out of this world.
And what Ray's Pizza? Was Ray's Pizza there?
No, that was later on.
Later
Ray's was, this was early, this was in the
Way back when.
50s,
Okay.
yes. So what happened, and then there was, on Fridays, we used to go, the big treat was La Rosa Bakery.
Okay.
Rosa Bakery used to make great little small Sicilian bread, like pizzas,
Yum.
for 50 cents, and we were in heaven. Getting back to the story. Well, guess what?
Wow.
The guy was sitting back, and he came back with the sandwiches, and all of a sudden, a cop came, and Tom told him, my brother-in-law will be right back, he's just getting a couple of sandwiches. Well, the cop said no. He's parked in front of a hydrant. He gives him a ticket. And Pete sees this. And he said, what are you doing? He said, I'm right here. I got the sandwiches, hot sandwiches. And he's in the car. You giving me a ticket? The cop said, yes, you parked in front of a hydrant. I have to give it. Now, this guy just started. Okay, he was a new cop on the beat, Elizabeth Street Station House. So Pete looked at him and he said, you know something? He takes the ticket and rips it up right in front of him.
Wow.
So the guy's looking at him, he was writing up another ticket. He said, you better not write me another ticket. And he said, anyway, if you're so tough, you won't be so tough if you put that gun away and you put it in your car, your squad car. So the guy said, oh yeah? He said, yeah. So guess what happened?
What happened?
What happened was they said, well, you want to be tough? They went to Michael Morrow's building and they said, let's go in the back, in the yard. You want to duke it out with me? Okay, so that's it. So he left the gun in the car. All right? The whole neighborhood knew about it.
This is high drama.
It was high drama. And the whole neighborhood knew about it. And they gathered around. They said, Pete's with the cop. Oh, my God. 5 minutes later. Well, Pete walked out. What happened to the cop? He was his head first in the trash can, knocked out. And he left them there. And guess what? They went home. They went to Tommy's mom. And the rest is history because the sandwiches were still warm as they came. So this was a great story with Pete. Now, the irony of the whole thing, and the wonderful thing about it is, I first knew about Pete because we used to go to the schoolyard and play stickball, PS21. And the schoolyard was adjacent to a chain link fence on Mott Street. On the ground floor, there was a young lady there walking around. And Pete touches me on the arm, and while I was playing, he said, come here, you got to do me a favor. And I said, what is it, Pete? Because I knew who he was. Everybody knew who he was. He said, go to that girl and tell her that I would like to speak to her. So I was like stunned, okay? I said, oh, you sure? He said, yeah, go ahead. Okay, I want to talk to her. So I made out I was searching for the ball I hit. And I said, excuse me, Pete wants to speak to you. The young girl, very pretty girl. Well, the good thing about this was he went over and the young lady wound up being his wife a couple of years later. They lived many, many years together in Florida, and they have a wonderful life. And he passed away, Pete, a few years ago, but his wife, Josephine, Jo, is still around, and that's Tommy's sister, Tom DeGrazia. And that's the great story about all these things. And he's a legend forever. The neighborhood gave him hero worship forever and ever, what he did to the cop. Head first into a trash can, knocked out. Could you imagine? And that was it. And they went home and they ate the food.
Those were the good old days.
That was the good old days. And then that was some of the stuff that you wanted to hear. Now, I got to get something here, and I forgot to look at that. I will just look.
Great story, Vinny.
Yes, it's a great story, but I want to mention one thing because
I hope all these tough guys went to church on Sunday.
They went to church.
Everybody went to church on Sunday nights.
They all went to church on Sunday, most of them. Okay. By the
Church
way,
was packed with people, including all the.
oh
tough
yeah,
guys.
he got married in St. Patrick's.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, everybody got married at that group,
Yeah.
St. Patrick. By the way, Thomas DeGrazia, okay, a guy we grew up with, currently lives in Hawaii, and he wrote a wonderful piece about Pete Savior in the episode. I think it's second episode. The name of his book is called Peacemaker: A Sicilian American Memoir by Thomas DeGrazia. I would recommend that to anybody to read about the history of the neighborhood, etc. And that's really my story about Pete. And I got to tell you something. Nobody like him on Elizabeth Street. Nobody ever will. But he protected us, and that's my story, Monsignor.
Yes, that's great.
So
where did you fit in this concept? You weren't a tough guy, but you were.
I was a young
You were
boy.
sheltered by some tough guys now and then.
Well, at this point, yeah, because
Right.
you know why? Because I was a little guy.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, and I never ever. I was just one of the smallest guys, if not the smallest guy in my class.
Yeah, me too.
And they saw a small guy. They used to try to pick on me. So I told my father about this. So you know what he did? He gave me a pair of boxing gloves and a punching bag. So I learned, and I grew, and I grew, and I grew, and then I fought back. I mean, but these are older guys that took advantage at that time. But you couldn't, because there were people at the neighborhood that would protect you at all times. And there's a lot of other wise guys that will protect us, whether family members or etc. But these the wise guys were also around. You always had somebody, either in the family or a friend, that would help you in time of need. And there were plenty of them, at least 50 to 100.
Well,
Now,
that's what family is all about.
that's what families are all about, Monsignor.
That's what a neighborhood is all about.
Now, before I introduce my friend, a dear friend, Red Napoli, there's a couple of things I remember growing up with Red as teenagers. First of all, Red and I participated in that championship game against St. Anthony that we won, and we beat St. Anthony of Padua, and Red was the rebounding forward, and I was the shooting guard on that team. That's the one great, wonderful story with Red. And we always, talked to each other because we loved the same things, and I'll tell you what we loved about. But the second thing I remember, on Hester Street, we would team together. Some of the guys sometimes would team together playing stickball, which was our national pastime. And on Hester Street, he and I had the fortune of hitting a home run back to back. He hit a home run, I hit a home run. Back to back. I'll always remember it because it was a very hard thing to do on Hester Street because of the way the streets were lined up.
Yeah.
And that was the wonderful thing about that. Now, the third thing is we love to talk about sports. Left and right, always conversation about sports, especially boxing. Now, I can honestly say Red and I have looked up from bare knuckle days of John L. Sullivan to now, and we talked about it. We were so involved with it. All we did was talk about fighters and club fighters and any fighters. We knew their names. It was just remarkable. And there's a later on a later segment we're gonna we'll talk about the fighter from my neighborhood that was the best fighter, but not now.
Wasn't there a boxing ring in the parish center?
No, there was one at James Center.
Okay.
James Center that everybody learned that the fight. You go there and you could punch a few rounds, but they didn't have any boxing matches in there.
Okay.
But Red, we always talked about sports, and we both agree. I don't care. Anybody else could say different. But we both agree the greatest fighter that ever lived, pound for pound, was Sugar Ray Robinson. And that's it. Nobody better than him. Nobody will ever be better than him out of all the fighters.
But he wasn't from the neighborhood, was he?
I doubt it. Walker Smith from Harlem. Sugar Ray Robinson. His real name was Walker Smith.
Walker Smith.
Now,
Interesting. Didn't know
now I'll introduce my good friend, Red Napoli, who has a couple of stories to
that.
tell
And he
you.
has to tell us why his nickname is Red.
Okay.
Because his first name is really Donald, which happens to be my first name.
Donald Napoli, a.k.a. D.D. Red. You remember that, Monsignor, right?
Yes, but how'd you get your nickname?
I got the name Dee Dee because my aunt lived also in the building at the Monroe. She used to play with my chin. Well, first of all, she lived on the second floor.
You played with your
facing-
chin?
In the Monroe, facing Lafayette Street.
All right.
And she babysit for me. I was maybe 3 or 4 years old. And she kept me facing the window, and I couldn't say the word truck. Every time a truck passed by,
What did
I'd
you say?
Look at the red frock, look at the blue frock, look at
Okay.
the green frock.
Okay.
And she'd play with my chin, Dee Dee, Dee Dee, Dee Dee, Dee Dee. And that's how I got the name Dee Dee.
Ah,
But interestingly enough,
who knew?
when they circulated the Zoom, my name appeared as Donald.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Downstairs.
Joe Black, who I've known for over 65 years, he said, "Who is Donald?" He knew me only as Dee Dee Red. Now,
And his name, you just referred to him
is
as,
Joe Russo.
his real name is Joe Russo, but you
But-
called him
but
Joe Black.
everyone-
None of you have names that are
But
your own
Monsignor,
names.
Everybody in the neighborhood has a nickname.
Exactly.
And if you didn't go to grammar school with them,
Right.
or high school with them,
Right.
you wouldn't have known their last name. So whether it's Vinnie Red, JB, Tiger, Vinnie Head, Tommy Brown, Joe Black, everybody has a nickname. So if I mention Vinnie LaBarbera, they say, "Who is he?" Vinnie Red. Well, why don't you say Vinnie Red? Now on to my story, but that's the truth. It was always about nicknames. Now you want to hear about Snowball?
I do.
Do you really?
I'm waiting.
Okay.
We're all waiting.
This is over 60 years. When I think about it, I'm still amazed. My sister found the dog. It was really a puppy. Small, white, fluffy. The dog, I think, was, well, it was actually half chow, half Spitz. The dog was abandoned. She brought the dog home. Nobody wanted this dog. We lived in the Monroe building, Lafayette and Prince, 5 people in 3.5 rooms. We didn't need a dog. That's the last thing we needed was a dog. My sister was 13 years old. Between her crying and her moaning for about an hour, my parents finally caved in. We kept the dog. They named the dog Snowball. Well, we all grew to love the dog. My mother became very attached to the dog. My father even more so. Every place my father went, that dog was right behind my father. In fact, the dog slept in the bedroom on the floor next to my father's bed. One day I recall my father went out. I don't know where he went. The dog was sleeping in the bedroom. My mother was hanging curtains. I remember my sister went out maybe about 20 minutes later. All of a sudden, I hear my mother screaming, "Dee Dee, Dee Dee, where's the dog? Get the dog. The dog is not here. Your sister Marie, she left the door open. He ran out of the house."
Uh-oh.
I come flying out of the bedroom. I run down into the lobby of the building looking for the dog. No dog. I run out to Lafayette Street and I start walking up towards Spring Street. I stop at the firehouse. 2 firemen are outside, sitting down. And I asked them, "Did you see Snowball?" They know the dog because my father walked all over the neighborhood with that dog. They said, "No, we haven't seen him, but if we see him, we'll let you know." I turn around and walk back to Prince Street. I turn around Prince Street. I walk past Buffers, towards Mulberry Street, around the chicken market, I look down Mulberry Street. I don't see the dog. Now I'm starting to get nervous and I'm
course.
worried. I don't know where this dog could
It's a big
possibly-
city, little dog.
I don't know where this dog is, Monsignor. I walked back toward Prince and Lafayette Street. I remember staying there motionless on the corner of Lafayette and Prince.
Sure.
I see a couple of guys walking towards me across Lafayette Street. Looks like they were coming, from the west side. I asked one guy, "Did you happen to see a white dog?" He said, "I did." I said, where? He said, I think it was near Crosby Street. I says, Crosby Street?
You're some distance.
I said,
Yeah.
could this be possible? I waited till the light turned green. I started running up towards Crosby Street. I get to Crosby Street. I look up and down Crosby Street. There's no dog. I start walking up another block towards Broadway, praying and hoping that I'm going to see this dog. Now, Broadway, you know, is a pretty active block.
Yes.
I start walking up maybe 50, 60 feet toward Houston Street to see if I spot the dog. It's a white dog, you know, he'll stick out. No dog. I turn back. I said, let me go up another block.
And now you're really worried.
Now I'm really worried.
Yeah.
I start heading up toward Mercer. I look up, I see Finelli's bar. Finelli's a pretty popular place. Till today, it's probably, if not the oldest, maybe the second oldest establishment in the city. My father was a regular at Finelli's. I said, he may be in there. Maybe that's where he is, in Finelli's.
Your father?
Yeah, he knew Mike Finelli, the
Yeah.
owner. He knew
Okay.
all the patrons.
Uh-huh.
I said, how am I going to tell him this dog is lost? We can't find the dog. He'll be devastated.
Heartbreaking, yeah.
So as I walk closer, I see him at the bar. His back is towards me. As I get a little closer, my knees almost buckled. And I scream out, Snowball! The dog is at the foot of the stool next to my father. My father and the dog jump up, startled. My father turns to me and says, what happened? I says, what happened? I've been looking for the dog for 25 minutes. I thought he was lost. He ran out of the house. Marie left the door open. So I says, I thought he got hit by a car crossing Lafayette Street. It's miraculous that this dog is not killed
Absolutely.
or get lost. So my father tells me, he says, I was stunned that the dog was here. I thought maybe you brought him.
The
You
dog
brought
walked
him
in.
He told me basically that what
Dog walked
happened,
into the bar?
The dog was outside Finelli's. One of the guys came in
Right,
and said the dog was outside. He let him in.
right.
My father said that he was shocked that the dog wasn't killed
Yeah.
crossing Lafayette Street. He wasn't surprised that the dog found his way to Finelli's. He said because he took the dog there 50 or 60 times, and he knew the way to Finelli's better than my father. In fact, he led the way. Never on a leash, but always with my father. Anyway, he says, look, have a beer. Thank God the dog is safe. I had a beer with a few of his friends. Then we turned, went home, gave the good news to my mother. Thank God the dog was safe. Fast forward about 15 years later, my father had passed, the dog had passed. My wife and I, we went, there was an exhibition in Soho, all about Little Italy, with great paintings and prints. And we struck up a nice conversation with a stranger. And he tells me, are you familiar with the area? I said, I know it well. I was born and raised in Little Italy. I says, I lived in the Monroe building on Lafayette and Prince, and my wife came from Christie Street. We now live in Brooklyn since we were married. I said, what about yourself? He said, I live in Queens. He said, but I worked on Crosby Street for many years. In fact, he says, I would frequent a bar, a very famous bar not too far from here, Finelli's. Do you know it? I said, I know it well, I says. My father was a regular there. He said, really? What was his name? I said, Louis. Louis, he says. Did he have a white dog named Snowball? I said, yeah, he did. He says, I used to drink with your father every Saturday at Finelli's.
You used to drink with the dog, too.
I said, you're going to be kidding me.
It's
says,
not,
no, your
it's not like
father's
the
a great-
dog was a regular there.
He says, your father was a great guy and a smart dog. I says, Monsignor, you can't make this stuff up. I said,
It's a great dog story.
and that's my story
Right,
about
right.
Snowball.
Right. Cute story.
Beautiful story, Red.
It is.
Nobody would ever believe it.
No, no. I tell you, you know, the dog was, it was really, I mean, you know, a half-breed dog, you know, but a smart dog, you know, and nobody wanted that dog, you know. We had him for about 15 years. Smart dog.
How many blocks was it actually to get to Finelli's from
Well,
the Monroe building?
you had Lafayette Street, which was a very, very highly trafficked area. So we had to cross Lafayette, you know, and then Crosby, Broadway, and then Mercer.
Oh my God.
Right. He made his little way.
My father was, you know, my father was upset the fact that he crossed Lafayette by himself because he could easily got killed. But he wasn't surprised that he got to Finelli's by himself because he knew the way.
He knew the way. You know what's remarkable about this story, Red?
Every Saturday he went to Finelli's with my father, so he knew the way.
He never got hit by a car. It's remarkable. The cars were going back and forth on Lafayette Street, and he made it.
Yeah.
He knew. It's just a remarkable story about Snowball.
Yeah.
He lived. How many years did he live, Red?
15 years we had.
15 years. God bless him. That's a story of all stories,
It's a
Red.
great dog story.
Yeah, great.
You got no.
Now, you know, I always say we had a lot of interesting characters in our neighborhood with diverse personalities and unpredictable behavior. You know, my father was one of those characters. My father drank beer, but only Schaefer beer at home, and never on a Tuesday.
Where's that?
For some unexplained reason, Monsignor, I never got the answer.
Okay.
I don't know why. He drank pretty much beer every day, even when he wasn't feeling well, because he said when he did drink beer, he felt better. He ran a freight elevator on Mercer Street that he pulled up by cable. He was only 5'9", but he was very, very strong and he had powerful hands, probably even stronger hands from pulling up that cable all the time.
Sure.
I recall a situation when he hurt his shoulder and his back on the job. And the doctor put him on disability. He had to stay home for about a week and a half, I think. They put him on medication. And he told him you couldn't have any beer.
Oh,
Well, that went
That's a challenge.
That went nowhere.
yeah.
My mother was working at the time, and she said to prevent him from going to Buffer's around the corner on Prince, that's where he bought his Schaefer beer. She waited until he fell asleep that night, took all his shoes, and brought them next door to her neighbor, Florrie, to hold. And then she went to work, feeling pretty comfortable.
Thinking that would prevent your father
Yeah,
going out.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, the next morning he got up, everything was fine. I guess the afternoon he was getting thirsty. And he went into the closet looking for his shoes, ready to go down to Buffer's to get his beer. Couldn't find the shoes. Went all over the house going crazy looking for his shoes, under the bed, in the closets. Now, he only had a 6th grade education, Monsignor, but he was pretty resourceful.
Sure.
He went in my sister's closet. He got a pair of her heels. Put the heels on. Bad back and all, went wobbling down the one flight of stairs, onto Lafayette Street, around to Prince, into Buffer's, wobbled into Buffer's. Adele, who ran the front counter, saw him wobbling in
With heels.
with the heels.
Right. A determined man.
She doubled up and laughed, almost fell off the stool. But he got his Schaefer beer,
Yep. He got his beer.
wobbled back out. It must have took him a half hour to get home. But he went up the stairs, had his beer, made his day, and for him, it was worth the effort. And that's my Hill story.
That's a great dad story. You got a good dog story and a good dad story. It's wonderful.
That's my Hill story, Vin.
So that's it. You know something? There were wonderful stories.
I got
Precious, very precious.
I got
Precious.
I got one more.
One
He's
more.
got one more.
Oh, good.
Yeah, good.
Please, one more, Red.
I got one more. Now, you know, as I mentioned, he worked on Mercer Street,
Uh-huh.
right? And he worked with a lot of the truckers. A lot of the truckers that came in, he helped them load the elevator. And these guys would give him tips, cash tips. But one guy in particular gave him a set of boxing tickets, most of them to St. Nicholas Arena, but occasionally to Madison Square Garden. He didn't much care for the fights. He gave me the 2 tickets. And I would take my wife and we would go to the fights. Probably 12 or 13 fights, but great fights. We saw Cassius Clay fight twice before he was champ. Maybe he was 20, 21 years old. We saw Joe Frazier fight, Willie Pastrano, Hurricane Carter, Luis Rodriguez,
Yeah.
Willie Pastrano.
Oh,
A lot of great fights we saw. Anyway, so we took this cash money, and there was a loose tile in the bathroom above the tub in my house. And he would squirrel this money into that tile and just cover it up. But when he needed money to go to Finelli's, he would tap the tile.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe a week or 2 weeks went by. My sister Angela, she was cleaning the bathroom for my mother. The tile fell loose. She's seen all this money come flying out. She takes all the money out, gives it to my mother. They decide to reseal the tile, but they did such a good job of resealing the tile that you couldn't distinguish the resealed tile from all the other tiles. I don't know, maybe a week, maybe even more than a week went by. I guess he was short of money. It was time to go to Finelli's. It was Saturday. He's in the bathroom now, on his hands and knees, tapping all these tiles, looking for this tile. He's mumbling in there. They're outside. They open they see him and they're mumbling, grumbling. He turns around. He catches them laughing. They finally had to tell him that they resealed the tile. Now he's really going nuts. He said that he had his money in there. So they said, well, we resealed the tile. Now he comes out looking for a hammer now. He's ready to break up all these tiles. They had to stop him now, of course.
Sure.
So they gave him $80. They beat him out of $120, I think, but he was okay with that, I guess, because he didn't have no choice at that point. And that was the end of the story. So now he had to find a new parking spot for his loose cash. That's the end of that story.
Very good,
Oh,
very
boy.
nice.
Let me tell you, the tile story. That's
Yeah.
forever going to be the tile story, Red. I appreciate that, Red. And you know something? These are just one of the many, many stories that we know, and our memory is so accurate of things that happened 75, 80 years ago, growing up. We don't forget. It's amazing, right, that we have this idea of knowledge going forward. I think people are fascinated by growing up in Little Italy like we were, but we actually lived it every day of our lives in this world that we live in. A lot of people talk about it. A lot of people are fascinated by it, but we lived it. And another person that would like to introduce is John Bavona. Now, John Bavona, it was his idea. He's the creator of Mulberry Street Memories because it's his idea to start this podcast from the get-go. John, you want to explain to everyone how it started and what was involved?
Well, yes, a good way to start it is COVID. That's what really started it. But there's a lot behind it before COVID. What had happened was my wife and I had moved to Florida, and COVID came along, and a good part of our life be with our friends was kind of taken away at that point. And I thought something has to go. One of the things that we used to do, we traveled back and forth to down and back to Florida, so that we could, see our families and friends. And doing that, what I did was, before we went to Florida, we started to hang out in the mornings when we were able to, as you heard from Red, a place called Buffer's. And Buffer's goes back to 1929, and same people up to that time.
It was a restaurant, John, right on
Yes,
on the
a
corner of
restaurant.
Lafayette
A
and
restaurant, right,
and
exactly.
Prince Street.
If any of the guys were around that can be there, they were there for breakfast.
The whole neighborhood had breakfast or lunch there, right?
Right, exactly. And actually, Johnny Buffer is in one of our gang. And you'll see him soon. And I started to think about what we could do, being back in Florida, and somebody was talking to me about Zoom. I had no idea what it was, being of a certain age that just had no idea. Anyway, I looked into it and it seemed like it might be a good idea, and I called around to the guys, and everybody seemed to like the idea, and so we started it, and we started it, and I thought Saturday mornings would be good to be together. We were 13 people when we started it, and 10 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays, we started it. That was 6 years ago.
Wow.
We've only missed 3 Saturdays. Everybody really took to it, and it was really great. And the other thing I did was all of the sessions are on my computer, every one of them. And that's what made us, not just me, all of the guys. That's how we started with regard to the podcast. Now, you wonder, how does that happen that you had 13 guys at that point and be friends for almost all our lives? Well, I'm not going to give you a history lesson because that would take a long time, but it really is one. But you look at it, first of all, we all went to the same school, and St. Patrick's. They were right in Little Italy. All of us were right near it, within a few blocks maybe of it. And we all went there. And by the way, I figured out that of all the guys, we were all born between the years of 1940 and 1944. So we grew up in the neighborhood together, one way or another. We grew up, a lot of us went to Cardinal Hayes High School. A renegade was me going to Xavier, and a couple of guys went to other places, but we stayed friends through that. And then a number of us went to Fordham College together. We'd drive up there with two cars. There were about, I think, 8 of us then, and we were together there. And then, like the things that happen in your life, we got married, I had a family, did different things in our lives, but we never forgot the friendship. And that's what it's all about. It's so important, and we realize that. One of the things that we did, we would, in all those years, got together, you know, for dinners or for whatever. And when my wife and I lived in New Jersey, and we fortunately had a nice sized house, and that 4 times a year we would have, you know, all our friends come to us for those things. And as much as we could, we got together, and we've done that for all of our lives. And it's probably one of the best things we've ever done, because you can't, they always say, old friendship is the best friendship. And we're gonna keep doing it. So that's
Wonderful, John.
that's how we got here.
Yeah, sometimes we talk about indissoluble, you know, bonds in marriage, but it can exist in friendships too. And
Yeah.
you've accomplished that in the way you've lived your lives. You've stayed in touch and supported one another and enlivened your friends and people, myself, because I wasn't part of your growing up. But I'm enriched by hearing the stories and you know, connecting with things that really have meaning and give life to.
Well, yes, I think that the older you get,
The more important those stories are.
yeah, the more poignant it is. And it's been wonderful with our Zoom sessions, and we'll hopefully keep doing it. We've lost a couple of our friends. It's life, and wonderful people. But we'll keep going.
For sure.
That's right.
That's a beautiful story, John. And we had a lot in common. First of all, we all had a desire to succeed. We all felt that we really are. There was something amongst us that made us go an extra mile to do. And thank God, all of us were succeeded in their own world. And that's what we're very proud of, because our neighborhood, you know, was, as John would say, an Italian ghetto. We were all together in one big melting pot amongst, you know, Houston Street to Canal Street, centered by Lafayette Street and the Bowery, and that was our world. And a lot of people, you know, that lived through it would tell you that basically we wanted to make something, we wanted to be successful and show that we came from this area and we strive for success, and most of us did.
And our listeners should know that we're sitting in the rectory, the parish house of St. Patrick's Old Cathedral at 263 Mulberry. That's where we are now as we're having this conversation.
Yes.
Reflecting on those days when you were kids growing up, when the church, the rectory, the school were hub. It was the hub of your lives. Kind of you weaved in and out of it, and it gave you kind of a direction and purpose and a sense of belonging.
Yes.
Monsignor, this is such a beautiful chemistry that we all have. And not only that, but how many times do you see a 70+ year relationship like this that continues to grow? It's remarkable.
It is remarkable.
Can I say something else? And this is interesting. So, Vinny and I hadn't seen each other for 30 years. True story. And he had met my sister at a dance or something.
This was a neighborhood reunion
Yeah.
in the youth center.
In the youth center. And he asked her for me, and there wasn't any reason that we didn't see each other. You just go different, ways as you're older. So we met for lunch. We decided, it was like yesterday that we were together. And that's happened with all of the guys. And the girls too, it's the same thing. And that shows you that those, you know, what we did, how the friendships were from the beginning was still there. You know, it was easy to say hello and whatever, and you just fell into it. You were back. Nothing else had to be done but saying hello. That was it.
John makes a good point. You pick up where you just left off.
Well, you had a lot of common ground.
That's
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
You had a
No,
lot
no
of-
matter what the span
Right.
is. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
the span was very, very long, but guess what? Okay, immediately, I sent him a picture of us. I enlarged the picture of us as choir boys. I said, John, you know, and I explained who I was, et cetera, and I said, maybe we can have lunch. And he immediately called me the following week, and we hit it off. And by the way, this all started, besides Angela, John's sister, this also started with Red's sister-in-law, Laura, because she saw me on a train station on Spring Street, and she looked at me, and I knew Laura well because we dated briefly when we were young kids, as teenagers. And she spotted me. She said, you have to come to this reunion in October. They would love to see you. I haven't been there in the neighborhood in years and years because I wound up marrying a girl from Westchester, and my life was always in Westchester, and also going to the only restaurant I went to was Il Cortile and took her there. That was the only thing I did all those years. So this resurfaced, and all of a sudden it brought back something that was destiny here, Monsignor. That what's happening now is just remarkable. People think, well, we're 80 plus and we're doing this podcast. Why?
Right.
How could we be doing this? But it's our desire to succeed and have fun and let people know about our world growing up.
Yeah.
And a lot of
and
people...
although you don't live here any longer, you stop by Buffet's, this restaurant on Lafayette and Prince,
Yes.
in the morning.
Oh yeah, for years we started
Right, and
Buffet's.
I did too. I would
Oh,
stop
you were
by
part of the
and
crowd.
Go in there for a cup of
We used
coffee.
to call for you.
Right, I didn't know you guys then, but then I got caught up with your stories and reminiscences of
You know,
growing
Vinny-
up here.
Vinny mentions that we shared a love of sports, particularly boxing. I don't know if he recalls this, but he put on a one-man show. Where was that, Vin? It's your cousin's.
Oh, that Trumpets Jazz Club
Yeah.
in Montclair, New Jersey.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry, there's some girls here that came to pick
But
up the boys.
I told you the handsome one.
Come on in.
Oh, here he is, here
You
he
wanna
is.
see
Here
him?
he is.
Hi, how are you? How are you?
Oh God, look at this.
Right. Hi. How are you?
You know
Say
something?
hello.
We just mentioned you, and I mentioned your name just now in a podcast. I want you to know that. And we're still on the podcast
still
right
recording.
now. I want you to know that. So there's a whole history of
What you
this.
It's
said,
good to
you
have some-
romance?
We had a brief.
It's good to have some
Yeah,
feminine.
whatever you
input
want to
here.
call it. It was the summer of '59.
He remembers.
what
I don't remember.
I wanted to say was that I brought Vinny a set of books that he had loaned me 30 years earlier, all about the black fighters. Sam Langford, you remember.
Oh, of course, Jack Johnson,
He
etc.
loaned
The
me
Black
30,
History.
30 years
50.
prior,
It was 50 years.
50 years.
Yeah.
So when I went to the show, I brought him the books, he was shocked.
Yes. And, you know, he brought it back years later that all of a sudden, you know, we rekindled our relationship, and I was doing, you know, a show at my cousin's jazz club in Montclair, New Jersey, and all of a sudden these books showed up. I knew about it, but I would never think, he brought it out, he says, here. And of course, Lillian, his wife, said he keeps everything. And sure enough, these boxing books I cherish for Black History Month. I mean, that's how we know so much about, because we love boxing so much. We used to talk about it day and night. But that's our whole history, Monsignor.